Buggity, 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 buggity. Let's go racing, boys. Let's go racing, boys. New Hampshire.
Let's go racing, boys.
They don't sound like NASCAR fans in New Hampshire. Welcome Jeff Owens into the fast lane. You ever talk to a native New Hampshirean about NASCAR? What do they sound like?
They talk like they're from Boston. So it used to be always fun when we would go up there. We couldn't understand the word they said, and they couldn't understand us. And it was always a good time. But there's a lot of, believe it or not, there's a lot of race fans in New Hampshire, and they usually come out for the races up there.
Yes, they do pack the place. Interesting racetrack. Would you say it's one of the flatter tracks on the circuit?
Yeah, I would say so, Phil. It's probably the flattest track on the circuit other than Martinsville. It's a mile, kind of like Phoenix, but a little bit more flat and shaped a little bit more like Martinsville. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge to get your car to turn in those corners, and as a result of that, we see a good many spin outs and wrecks and stuff. So the races there are at least usually pretty eventful.
Go back to last week at Iowa, and I thought it was an excellent race. I like that short track. I like the way they can move on that short track, the way they can go three wide. And, I thought the racing was pretty good. The finish was kind of anticlimactic, the way it happened after the restart. But for the most part, I thought we had some good racing.
Yeah, I agree, Phil. I thought it was really good. It's rare to see that kind of 2 and 3 wide racing on a short track like that, and they were able to do that all day. And I think they have the perfect recipe. Not only was it a good short track, but the asphalt was wore out and it was chewing up the tires. And we've seen in the past that's what makes a good race. Bristol was a fantastic race because of that. We saw some of that in this one where they're having to be careful with their tires. You saw guys going with 2 tires, some with 4. And it just, it mixed it up, and it made guys have to race and find ways to get around each other. I thought it was a thrilling race, and I thought it was a great win by Ryan Blaney, particularly, that's where he and his dad sort of grew up in the Midwest in that area. They had a ton of family and friends there at the racetrack, and I thought that was really cool to see him win that race in front of somewhat of a hometown crowd like that.
Jeff, I asked Josh Harris from Darlington earlier in the week because of how good the racing was at Iowa and with the packed house there. Do you believe Iowa is going to get a permanent slot on the schedule moving forward?
I think so. I don't see how you couldn't bring it back after what we saw last week, and it is certainly more competitive than a lot of your bigger tracks, particularly some of your mile and a halves. They had a great crowd there. That is a underserved market, I think, in the Midwest. They go to Kansas, but you really don't have another race except for the Chicago street race. I don't know that really counts. This is a perfect grassroots short track type of race in a section of the country where they have a lot of fans. So I definitely think they should come back. No question about it.
In the fast lane with Jeff Owens here tonight on Sports Talk. And Jeff, I know it's a silly season when NASCAR tries to start tinkering with the rules a little bit. They announced earlier today that there's going to be a change to the starting lineup, and I'm not so sure it's a bad thing. According to jski.com, rather than having the final round speeds determined first through 10, the drivers from Group A are going to get the outside rows, and Group B will get the inside rows 2 through 5, with the fastest 2, obviously, qualifiers on the front row. Good move, do you think, by NASCAR?
It's worth a try. They've been tinkering with qualifying for years because, quite frankly, it's just not very exciting. It's it's a little bit better than the old single lap qualifying runs they did. At least sometimes you get track cars out there together and stuff. But yeah, I'm fine with that. I think anything to mix it up and possibly make it a little more interesting is fine. Qualifying don't matter a whole lot. It does a little bit on some tracks, but you see the fast cars overcome a bad qualifying run in most races. So, yeah, sure, why not? Let's give it a try and see what happens.
What do you make of the news coming out yesterday that Gene Haas is going to hold on to one of the Stewart Haas Racing charters, presumably, I guess, for himself to be able to run? Is he going to manage that team? And if so, who do you think he might put in that driver's seat?
Yeah, I think what he's going to do, basically the story behind that was, he had 4 charters. They thought he was going to sell all 4, and he wound up selling 3 and keeping 1. But I think the story behind that, he owns Haas CNC machines. He's the guy that sort of invented that, and pretty much every race team in the sport uses that equipment manufactured by his company. So it benefits him a great deal to stay in the sport with a sponsor. So I think he's going to have a couple of Xfinity teams. So, that's fine. The guy's been around a long time, and it's kind of good to see him stick around. But, there still won't be any more Stewart Haas racing. So that's still disappointing.
That is. It looks like Chase Briscoe is going to be moving to Joe Gibbs to replace Martin Truex, from what Christopher Bell told everybody. We got to run. We got to run. Have a great weekend. Be back.